Welcome to HR Studio Podcast. Through bi-weekly interviews with HR executives, thought leaders, authors, speakers, and trend spotters from the world of HR and beyond, we invite you to listen, learn, and leverage. Welcome to HR Studio Podcast, building the next generation of HR leaders. HR Studio Podcast is brought to you by A.J. O'Connor Associates, a trusted human capital consulting partner to emerging, mid-market, and world-class organizations. To learn more, visit us at ajoconnor.com.
All right, well, welcome everyone to HR Studio Podcast. My name is Fred Bunsa, and I am your host for today's episode. I'm really happy to have with us Lewis Carter, or Lou, as he's called. He's the CEO and president of Best Practice Institute, which is a benchmark research consortium, an association, and a management consulting firm. He's written a bunch of books. I think 11 is the total number, including Change Champions and Best Practices in Talent Management. And he's got a new book called In Great Company, which is what we wanted to talk about today. He's a leader in his field. And Lou, welcome to the HR Studio Podcast.
Thanks, Fred, for having me.
Lou, tell me, with 11 books, why this one? I noticed the foreword is by Marshall Goldsmith. How to Spark Peak Performance by Creating an Emotionally Connected Workplace. What prompted you to feel the need to go with book number 11?
All the previous books were best practices of leadership development and organization change from Fortune 500s. And I said, what's really bringing it all together? Why do these companies have successful change initiatives? And the book is research around why change really works.
Interesting. And what did you uncover as you started doing your research?
Well, you know, most of the change efforts, about 80%, they say, many different research fail. So why do they fail? It may be engagement, it may be other factors. It's really not, though, just about engagement. It's about something that's a lot deeper within all of us. When we have that connection, it's kind of like falling in love. We feel oxytocin, some dopamine. We feel the spark between and among each other. And we have this period. You might remember the first time, sure, you fell in love, right? Have you been
Absolutely.
in love before? Right. And you have this kind of, oh, I love everything about you. I love the way you eat your apple, or the way that you take your cup of coffee in the morning, you sip, all these great things. And then 18 months later, you're sitting down and you look at that person, you say, God, that apple really annoys me.
And the way she sips her coffee, oh my gosh.
It's just terrible, slurping it. So this book is about enabling that honeymoon period to be extended by things that really are core to our relationship to ourselves, others, teams, and the company. And those core things are what Spark is all about and what emotional connectedness is all about as the next step in emotional intelligence, keeping these kinds of long-term relationships that enable us to really perform at our peak and do more and better for our company.
Okay. And tell me about how you think about this idea. Is emotional connection the same thing as a corporate culture? And if so, how are they different?
It can be. Emotional connection is what happens when you bring everybody together and they actively co-create common outcomes. And what does that mean? Basically, you could be an emotionally disconnected culture where people are not psychologically safe to provide any type of innovation, any type of creative thinking. And in those environments, we found that about 2% of those people leave. They're the functional ones. So the people who leave relationships like they should when they're abused. Get out the front door, don't wait for the cops to come by and try to yank you out of the house. The other 98% stay in these dysfunctional relationships, cash their paycheck, and really make other people's lives very difficult and harm the fabric of the organization. What we're saying here is this, that emotionally connected cultures are the optimal cultures in these 5 areas. I asked hundreds of executives, what is it that makes them want to love their company? What makes them want to hate their company? And what kind of impact does that have on performing more and better? And look, we found out it wasn't about perks, benefits, any type of things like fancy foosball tables or ping pong tables, slides in the cafeteria that you hear really on Glassdoor. It's about 2 out of 10 people indicated that. Most people want to make a living, do well for their family, and get home at the end of the day, and make sure that it's a really excellent functional relationship so that they don't bring anything negative home into their children, their family, or whomever that they go home to. So that's really the core of what this is about, is when you have these 5 elements, these 5 key areas inside your workplace relationships and with yourself and to the organization, it helps you move to become that much more functional. And all those executives said that they're 3 to 4 times more likely to perform more and better when they feel that emotional connection to their workplace.
Okay. And Lou, was your research done with just leaders in organizations, or was it the entire, or some sampling of an entire organization?
It started out with leaders who gave me their understanding of what they thought or perceived their companies to have in terms of why their employees were the way they were and why they were the way they were. Then I extended it to about 3,000 employees longitudinally throughout. I did it through different regions, different geographic regions, MENA, EMEA, APAC, and US. And so it was across many employees in an organization.
Okay. And so you, in the book, you talk about, sparking peak performance, and use the acronym SPARK. So tell us what SPARK stands for. What are the elements?
Yes. There's 5 elements. The first is systemic collaboration. The second is positive future. The third is alignment of values. 4th is respect. And the 5th is killer outcomes, SPARK. And each of them are real simple in description. I can go through them. We did an experiment where we showed what happens when you have a SPARK relationship or a SPARK culture, and what happens when you don't have one. It was a very simple one, and it was really obvious what happened in each of them. I have a YouTube video of the actual experiment. Basically, when you facilitate a SPARK relation or a conversation in dyads and then triads and in a group, meaning 2 people, 3 people, and then within group, you get a 100% rate of people wanting to be together and hang out. The other one, people check out, they get mad, they get paranoid. I mean, granted, I was videotaping some of them, and things don't work out. So I could tell you more about that if that's okay.
Sure. Well, which of the 5 aspects of that SPARK that you talked about was one that most people found to be surprising, or they were a little intrigued by it being included in that short list?
The number one factor that everyone gravitated towards, and there was most kind of consternation, but most sort of critical analysis of, because there's a lot of things people say when I'm speaking about this, and I get a lot of people shoot a lot of arrows at me in this one, which is respect. And it's like this, it's like such a ubiquitous term. It's like, what is respect? What does that mean to you? Is it earned? Do I earn respect? Do I just give it? Respect is a currency. Well, how? What do you mean by respect? So it's a very personal thing for people. In the book, the way we define it is respect is a currency. The more you give it, the more you get it. And you have this systemic relationship where when you cut respect, you end up seeing that disrespect starts basically just going out, hockey stick approach. If you increase effect, hockey stick approach just keeps going up. So, there's so much around it. I might ask you today, how do you feel about respect, right? Well, you must have a billion things in your mind that when you think about that word.
Yeah, I mean, it's particularly in the workplace versus on the home front or with my friends, some different images would come to mind. Were you able to get to a certain definition within a corporate setting?
In a corporate setting, respect changes every single time. What the key is that people can do 4 things within relationships, and especially within teams. They mirror, challenge, support, and move to decisions. And
challenge, support, and move to decisions.
Yes. So these 4 things are from family systems therapy from David Cantor. If you read some of his books on family systems therapy, you'll see he has these 4 elements or practices, tactics that people do within meetings and within just any relationship. You and I, you just mirrored to me. You said, "Is this what you just said?" Yes, that's what you just said. So you mirrored it. Now I heard it back, and I'm able to give some sort of support for it, or challenge it, say, what does that really mean? Like, tell me more. What do you mean support? What does that mean? Can I really give support? Is it sometimes tacit rather than explicit? Are there different variances on support? Yes, all the above, right? So, and then let's move it to a decision. Well, we're going to now be a supportive culture. I'm going to support you. I choose to support you as my stakeholder, whatever it may be. So effective relationships, having those 4 core elements, first and foremost, allowing for equal, balanced airtime. Could be with us today. It could be within a relationship, could be within a team setting as well. These are some of the core elements of respect. And also, we call it clearing and withholding. That's another form of respect. Clearing anything that I have in terms of perception about you and not withholding any information about you that may harm you or me in the long run, because the complaining effect, the blaming effect has huge consequences inside of companies. And when we let it fester and we allow people to do things behind our backs, it just hurts everybody in the end run, in the long game.
So it sounds like, I mean, we do a lot of executive coaching, and I would say that respect doesn't come up explicitly when we get feedback from people, but when I hear you explain it, I think about implicitly it's in a lot of the constructive or developmental feedback that we'll hear in 360s, where they feel the leader's not giving them, enough airtime or the ability to show what they can do. I mean, would you get to respect as like a root cause of some of those issues?
I would, because we allow people to define it first, right? In our stakeholder relationships, what does it feel like to be respected for you? How are you best respected? What do you see as the negative or consequential effects of not being respected inside your system? Okay. And do we do these 4 things? Whether it be the canter or clearing withholding, or whether it be airtime, or a 4th kind of fill in the blank practice of how we feel we should be respected, or we should respect others. It is critical. It's that if you look in the book, there's a page that shows the spark and respect. I have a match going up and kind of sparks all the rest of the parts of it, because it's where everything starts.
Okay. Can you relate a story, Lou, about an organization where you worked with where respect was one of the key drivers of how you engaged with them?
Well, I'll give you an example of one of my clients who is extraordinary. And I just speak about him. He's an extraordinary entrepreneur and CEO. And I've learned more from working with clients and than I'm sure they do of me. So I've just learned so much from him. And I'll tell you why. So his name is Morris Miller. Morris was the co-founder of Rackspace. And he created just amazing things like fanatical customer support at Rackspace. So no matter what, he says he would never give a paper cut to a customer. So if they felt anything really badly or had this negative feeling between and among the customer and Rackspace, he would immediately jump in and say, do whatever you can to make these people feel good. Okay, wow. So he's like, do whatever you can. And he would also shadow these people. He'd be like, go to salespeople. He's like, I'm going to help you. I'm going to do all I can. He was really an over-the-top, incredible leader who was completely connected to his customers, completely connected, and to these really awesome employees who just wanted to learn from him. So Morris sold the company and really did amazingly in selling the company. And he found his passion, and his passion is saving patients' lives. Family's always been doctors. He wants to save patients' lives. Also is a lawyer, so he has this extraordinary background, has all this knowledge. So he said, okay, I'm going to save patients' lives. So I'm going to buy into a company called Xenex Disinfection Systems. Awesome systems. They make robots that disinfect hospital rooms in a way that no others do. So Clorox doesn't do it this way because Xenex goes to the front of the bed, the back of the bed, the side of the bed, and then every single surface to completely eradicate C. diff and a lot of infections that are one of the leading causes of death in hospitals today. So he said, okay, great, done. So, okay, ready to go. Morris comes in, and of course, no one believes how awesome this life-saving technology is. They say, wait a second. You have 30, 40 more studies showing that you can create 60 to 90% reduction in infection rates? He's like, yeah. So they say, I don't believe you. And they almost hang up on him. So we talked about respect inside the culture. So what Morris does is he says, wait a second, before you hang up on me, and this is part of the respect, I want you to know something. This works. I will show you it works. I'll prove to you that these numbers are real. And if in this peer-reviewed scientific journal, by the way, that was unsponsored, we didn't pay a dime for, nobody put us in for any reason other than we got a real peer-reviewed journalist from the Mayo, with the Mayo Clinic. I mean, what more can you ask for? So basically, so what he does as a really successful, giving, respectful business person is he goes ahead, somebody gives up robots, helps them with their operations, improves their operations, reduces C. diff and all these really horrible infections inside of the hospitals today, and proves to them what he can do to improve their hospitals. Total emotional connection with his customers, total emotional connection. And it's through his leadership and his purpose and his vision and love for wanting to save patients that makes it all worth it.
And so when you think about our audience of HR leaders or even leaders in general, what would you say is the translation there? Is what from that do you think, if you were consulting with us, you would say is that the learned lesson here in terms of respect is what?
Demand respect in the table as an HR leader. So if you're going to go to a CEO and you know something needs to happen, take ownership. Walk in, ask the right questions, mirror, sit with them, and explain what you really want to do, what you think needs to happen. Don't do it behind the scenes. I've seen too many HR people do work behind the scenes because they're scared of getting hurt. Don't worry so much. So much worry. Life is long. Life is good. Do not allow your fears to get in the way. Walk in, get an appointment. I guarantee that CEO is lonely. There's not many people they probably talk to. Be their friend, understand them. They may not seem like they want you as their friend. They may not. Give them a reason to. Be their friend, be their helper, give them advice, ask them if they need advice. Work with them, know who they are as a person. That's how I've begun to transform in my own life, as well as when you open yourself up to other people and who they are, you'll always win. If you just keep with assumptions and complaints about everything you do, you're going to destroy your relationships in life, and you're going to hide underneath your desk like George Costanza from a bad Seinfeld episode.
And it sounds like, Lou, that there's this two-way street with respect where you need to offer it, but you also need to demand it. Is that what I hear you saying?
You do need to demand it. Do it diplomatically. I mean, if you're at a point where you have to demand it inside of the culture you're in, it may be too open and random, and you really do need to demand. Because if a culture is too open and random, and you know what I mean, you need to go to demand. And if at that point, it's you can't establish a relationship because of some mismatch, scarring can't be healed. Move on.
Yeah.
At the same time, you really need to establish that core relationship with CEO. That's where it starts and stops. I know you all know that right now. I know that's an obvious statement. And at the same time, you really need to live it. Getting a seat at the table is this kind of, it's almost it's a myth. It's a fallacy. Just go. That's your job. I know there's perceptions about HR. And there's fear about HR. They want you to get out of the office. And we saw that with Michael Scott, right? Scott Paper Company. No one wanted to hang out with the HR person, right? Change that. Go into the office. Ask the right questions. Begin to become a part of the fabric of the company. Talk to all the operational heads. Ask them the right questions your CEO wants and needs to hear. It's risk mitigation for your CEO. Have you done that yet? Have you started to talk to the top 12 heads and first go to the CEO? What do you need to know? What haven't you found out? Every CEO will tell you they don't know what they don't know. Well, find out what they want to know and then go interview them, write up a report, go back to the CEO, let them know what you don't know, create interventions. Design a system that is emotionally connected inside your workplace, whereby people can hold these kinds of meetings that I'm describing now, create real outcomes, which is the K, real outcomes, killer outcomes inside meetings. Your CEO will always listen to you. You won't be CHRO or VP, SVP of talent management or LDOD. You're going to be far different than that. You're going to be a COO, CFO, CIO. You're going to be a C-level where you're ready to rock and roll with the CEO. And you're doing real work that is established with the CEO, where it starts and stops, helping him or her with the board of directors, critical. I mean, things that they really need and want inside the company.
Lou, your enthusiasm is contagious. Tell me, one of the things you mentioned in the book is about this idea about a positive future, the need for a positive future. Talk a little bit about how that plays out with being emotionally connected to a business or organization.
So this is another really great area I love, because there's first a behavior around it, because it's we feed forward rather than feed back, right? Tell somebody what they should do in the future rather than making them feel really bad about what they did in the past and made everybody feel bad, right? That's a good behavior for a positive future. Here's another. So the other is CEOs who are really great create strategic relationships for the future that are 10, 20, 30 years out. They look for legacy before they leave. And most CEOs realize that it's not them, it's not their name, it's their title and it's their career function. And I can speak to somebody who does this in an extraordinary way. His name is Ray Williams. He's a CEO of a Springfield clinic. He's the most amazing, awesome CEO. I work with him. He just created a strategic alliance. What is important about his strategic alliances, which cannot be disclosed yet, is that he thinks to 10 years in the future. He thinks 10 years in the future. How amazing is that? 10 years in the future. Who does that? Yeah. So what happens in positive future? There are companies that do it. Some do 30, 40 years, living companies. So this CEO said, I'm going to think 10 years in the future. Now, what happens in 10 years in the future? That means he's saving this company. Okay. So he sees, he does three-dimensional chess. He sees the future. He sees the present. It's kind of like Christmas, past, present, and future. He sees them all. And he knows that every single relationship he has between all of his stakeholders and all of his shareholders and his board members has to enable their success, the clinic's success, and everybody's success, which is very challenging to do. So what I encourage you all to do is really find those CEOs who are getting to the 10 years and say, I know you have challenges. I understand that you're doing something really challenging right now where you're going to get pushback to happen as a result, or outcomes that may happen as a result of a new strategic relationship. Because some people may not like it, right? People don't like change. However, it happens. And if you don't change many times, in this case, systemically, you see the change over time will be not what you want. Okay, you want something much better for yourself, your families, and your company. Oftentimes, if you have brilliant CEOs like Ray, he sees the future, he does the analysis, he has the experience, and he can make that happen. And in this case, you need to do a bit of follow your leader, especially if he's a wonderful human being who loves patients, who has a great philosophy for the future, and wants the best for everybody.
Yeah, and as we begin to wrap up, Lou, just what if you don't work for somebody like that? And this this idea of positive future is so critical. What can our listeners do within an organization to help promote that kind of really forward-looking positivity or opportunity for the future?
Well, here's the thing. I know I said this a lot. I said it starts and stops from the top. I really think that's true. And I think if you don't have that at the top, you have to get working with that individual. Yes. And go through this process so that you can, because every person, every CEO, I don't care who they are, if they're Frank Borman from Easter Airlines or even Chainsaw Al from a long time ago, I don't care who they are. Frank was, again, great astronaut, not a great CEO. However, if he had somebody to talk to him before he tanked Eastern Airlines, for obvious reasons, or even talk to Chainsaw Al, you could get to that core or heart of the matter and say, look, you're on your deathbed. Do you want people to know you for cutting and laying off thousands of people? Do you want to be known, or do you want to be known for creating a future for families for the next 10 years? Gee, I wonder. Yeah, I want to surrender when I'm hated. No one wants that. Nobody wants that, unless you're a complete psychopath. And there's, that is a completely different road we're not going to go down. So it's really about unearthing with that individual at the top what their true legacy should and could be. Okay. And that takes guts to do. You have to have guts to walk in and do that and do it the right way.
Sure. Yeah. But I think it's worth the fight and worth the challenge. And why not take a swing at that level? That's really important work. So Lou, as we wrap up, and as we think about our audience of rising HR leaders, is there any final advice you'd have, or anything in particular from the book or from your experience that you would just like to highlight for them?
Start now. Okay, so today's the day, right? So you're at your desk right now. It is carpe diem. Today, you're at your desk right now. I bet you're doing a bunch of reports and predictive analytics, or you're on your HRIS system, which I won't plug. All right, you're doing some things, right? You're typing, right? I'm not making fun of you. What I'm saying to you is stop. Go into your CEO's office, make a time with your CEO, find out who's around it, learn the business in a way that you've never before, unearth those questions, begin to have meetings where you can start to see how people collaborate, how people align with the values of the company, what respect really means to them, what you're doing to create that positive future, enable your CEO to create that positive future and connect it to outcomes. You have to start. And if you're just focusing on generalists, you're not doing the full job of what great CHROs and CTOs really do.
Awesome. Well, there's the battle cry for the day. Thank you, Lou Carter. We really appreciate it. Again, the book is called In Great Company, How to Spark Peak Performance by Creating an Emotionally Connected Workplace. And Lou was kind enough to give us a copy of his book, which we will raffle off to one of our subscribers. So if you're not yet a subscriber to HR Studio Podcast, please do so. You'll be able to get today's show notes. We'll put the link to Lou's YouTube video and to some of the studies that he referenced there, but hrstudiopodcast.com, where you'll be able to, as I said, be in the running for a copy of his book and also have access to all of our prior episodes. So Lou, once again, thank you so much for joining us today on HR Studio Podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Fred. It's really been good being here today. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to HR Studio Podcast. Through bi-weekly interviews with HR executives, thought leaders, authors, speakers, and trend spotters from the world of HR and beyond, we invite you to listen, learn, and leverage. Welcome to HR Studio Podcast, building the next generation of HR leaders. HR Studio Podcast is brought to you by A.J. O'Connor Associates, a trusted human capital consulting partner to emerging, mid-market, and world-class organizations. To learn more, visit us at ajoconnor.com.